Hey, my starlings, my Patreons. So this month's deep dive is a song that I rarely play in public, although it is probably going to be the title song to my upcoming album, Midlife, Crocus. So I wanted to play this song, I wanted to capture this song today because I'm here in Los Angeles, which is a city that is a part of the story behind the song. And for me, being here in LA after I haven't been here in 3 years, and it was just for a short visit, and then before that I hadn't been here in like 10 or 12 years. I have a lot of emotion invested in this town. As a kid, my sister and I came out here with our parents, and then later when we were old enough, we're like 9 and 10, flown out here on our own every single summer. And we would visit with our grandparents, who lived right nearby where I am right now, and off of Wilshire Boulevard in Hancock Park. And we would also branch out and visit like a lot of our aunts and uncles and cousins. And it was just so much fun. Los Angeles, if you've been here, you know it's like another planet. And growing up in Williamsburg, Virginia, it was very different for us. And we loved to like go shopping on Melrose and go to the Beverly Center and, go see the Capitol Records building. And, as a kid, I was always like, oh, one day I'm going to grow up and I'm going to have a record deal at Capitol or Universal or Sony or A&M or whatever, all the record companies, here in town. And it's funny because those were echoes of down the generations. So my mother, who died when I was 7, had very similar aspirations. And I didn't know this until kind of years later. I mean, my aunts and my grandmother would kind of trickle down stories about her, but her life was, going back in my family, there's been a lot of tragedy, and somebody has always lost a parent, whether through death or through abandonment, or both. Both parents. It's just been like the cycle of tragedy, and has continued to my mother. And of course, I've sworn to my kids that I will always be here for them, and I'm not going anywhere. So my mother was looking for a record deal. She played the piano. Mostly she played guitar, and she sang. She really admired Joni Mitchell, Joan Baez, the folk singers of like the 60s and 70s. And I think that's who she was kind of trying to emulate. I actually have some tapes of her singing and playing. It's just really interesting to still hear her voice. She had a very high, sweet soprano voice.
Got me a day I can play away, feeling just fine. I'm gonna put my cares away, feeling just fine. Bad times have held me down too long. Nothing can stop me now. Got me a day I can play away, feeling just fine. I'm gonna put my cares away, feeling just fine. Feel so happy I could cry. Don't ask me why. I wanna live before I die. Got me a day I can play away, feeling just fine.
My mother was such a gentle soul. She was like an angel in life, and I mean, she kind of had this halo of hair, and she just had these big eyes and this big smile. But she suffered from a lot of sadness through her life. She just suffered through a lot of tragedy. She lost her father. He was killed in a, he was actively enlisted. He was a pilot. He just died in a training exercise somewhere over Sicily, the island of Sicily, off of Italy. And years back, my grandmother, only like 20 years ago when my grandmother was still alive, she flew over there and she walked the beaches and just kind of listened for his spirit. She loved him very much. But she remarried when they were kids, my mother and her sisters, and then so they lost their father, and then she stuck the girls in boarding school and went off with her new husband on this long, long trip, and the girls were again abandoned. They were in this like terrible Catholic school with these nuns, and they had a nanny, but the nanny like went off to get married and they fired the nanny, and so it's just like they kept kind of getting even surrogate mothers and losing them. So it was just really hard, and I think my mother never really found herself in the process of growing up, and was just always trying to find someone to cling to. And when her marriage fell apart, that was probably the last straw for her, and I'm sure she was just feeling really hopeless. So, as an adult now and a mother and somebody who's been married, twice myself, I'm like, I have so much more empathy and I can really understand. But at the same time, as a mother, I cannot imagine getting to the point where you think it's okay to take your own life and just leave your kids. Like, let alone your husband or all the rest of your family, your loved ones. Like, I can't imagine doing that to my kids. So in a nutshell, she basically left my dad and came to LA to try to pursue a record deal, which, as you know, back in the 70s was, late 70s, early 80s was not like it is today. I mean, today you don't pursue a record deal. Like, you just go and do your music and put it out there yourself and, put it on Spotify and iTunes and whatever. But back then, musicians were dependent on these record companies and these A&R reps and all of that. So she came here and she was kind of rubbing elbows with a weird set of people, I think, and got, just really got off on the wrong foot and ended up blowing up her marriage. And so my parents got divorced when I was 5. And then fast forward, when I was 7, she was in a car accident and died. And she was in a coma actually for a week. And I'm telling you that because it's referenced in the song. So years later, I was told by my dad that it wasn't an accident, it was a suicide. And needless to say, to be believing all your childhood, it was an accident, and go through, I never really went through the stages of grief. I just got to, I didn't have denial because I knew that she was gone, but I just had acceptance. Like, what else do you do? My dad's a baby boomer. Like, baby boomers are very sweep it under the rug, don't talk about it. And I think he kind of had it up to here with her anyway. So the drama, right? And it was all just really strange. But to find that out as a young adult, that maybe it was actually an intentional death, was really jarring, to say the least. So then I had to process that. But, and I did in my own way. I dropped out of college. I ran away to Canada. And that's a whole nother story. But, I figured out that there's always something better coming, that life is worth surviving. Because, at that point, I was suicidal as well. I was like, oh my God, people have been lying to me. My mother isn't who they said she was. I'm not who I said I was. What the hell is going on? I went through a really, really tough time in college, in my early 20s. I had to break the cycle of tragedy and sadness. And, I think as parents, or even if you're not a parent, just saying no, putting your foot down and breaking the cycle of whatever happened to you as a kid is so important. And we have to move forward from that in order to heal ourselves, in order to heal the world. So this song is about my healing process, because I finally, after all these years, last year, through therapy and just kind of through my development as an artist and just kind of coming to understand myself and my mother a lot more, I was able to finally get past just accepting her death and get mad, get angry about it. And I had never done that. Even as a kid, I had just been like, oh, well, that's what happened. I have to buck up and move on. And, because that's the role model that my dad offered. And I didn't know any better. And so, it's just been, I've been repressing, I guess, this anger and huge disappointment, like, how could you do this? And so all of that went into this song that I'm going to play for you. So being here in Los Angeles this week it's like a mixed bag for me when I come to LA as far as my emotions. Like, it's, this used to be such a happy place that my sister and I would visit, but at the same time, visiting my maternal grandparents, there was a lot, and my aunts, my mother's sisters, and my uncle, her brother, there was a lot of, I think, repressed emotion about her death, and it was all very hush-hush. And kind of when I grew up and kind of heard the rest of the story, I understood why. But, as a kid, you sense that. And for me, it's really serendipitous and crazy for me to be visiting in this house. My husband's sister and her husband have a house only blocks away from my grandparents' house here in Los Angeles. And this house is of the same era. They're all from like the 1920s. It smells the same. It has the echoing to it and just that really old Los Angeles vibe. And so it really brings all of that back to me. To be able to sit down and play this song at this piano and share this with you is really special. So I wanted to do that while I was here. It felt really good to get angry, and it felt really good to put it in the song. And I made sure that the song was not something morose. It was not, dwelling on the sadness, but it moves along and it's fun. It's actually fun to play. The lyrics are so intense that I don't play it very often for the public. But the song is not about her death, her suicide. It's about me finally, and it's not really about my anger at, me finally coming to anger about that instead of just acceptance. It's about my rising out of that and being able to move on, because I finally got to that stage of grief, and I finally processed through that by creating this piece of art. And I'm able to play it quite easily without crying at all, because that's what I do. Like, I take my deepest, darkest feelings, I put them into a piece of art, and then it just becomes an object, and I can close the book, I can put it on the shelf. It's a thing, and it's no longer bursting inside of me. It's no longer this baggage that I'm carrying around with me. And so I have to say that is my biggest gift to myself. And if it's something that, if my art is something that, when I share it, someone else gets something out of it as well, then that's just a really awesome bonus. At least as far as this song's concerned. There's been a lot of other songs I've written where I definitely had my audience in mind, and I was like writing it, for people to be able to relate. But this one is just pure emotion. It's just pure, there's anger in it. There's delight in it. There's fun in it, at just being able to let go of carrying the terrible weight of just blindly accepting something that was so bizarre and so not right. Like, as children, we deserve to be protected, and it's okay to get angry at the adults who didn't act right in your life. And you'll hear me spell all that out in the song, like what I would say to her if she was here right now. But all that being said, I, of course, still love my mother very much. Her spirit is very much with me all the time. I feel like we're best friends, she speaks to me, and I've really come to know her and understand her so much more through the years, especially being a mother myself, and especially just growing and developing myself as an artist. I know she's cheering me on. I know she's so excited that you all are with me and have, jumped on board this crazy train in my life, and I am so grateful as well. So I hope the song doesn't break your heart, but instead gives you wings to go ahead and get mad, point the finger at somebody, blame them. It's not your fault. It's not always your fault. Some terrible, tragic things that happen to you. You don't need to shoulder that anymore. And once you realize that, your shoulders lift and they get a lot lighter. So this is Midlife, Crocus.
That killed you, it's called inevitable. It was something that drove over your heart years before. It wasn't the driver who pushed you off the road, as you swore you couldn't do this anymore. You pulled the brake before you had the chance. You didn't show up to my ballet dance. All innocent till I was 7. I assumed you'd gone to heaven, leaving me here to do each morning to fall. Hold again, your train is at the station, and my greatest expectation is to live past 33, just to break the spell you put on